My life suddenly turned upside down when I discovered that a helicopter landing pad was being built right on my family's property. Did Karen really think I would let her continue abusing her power like this? I am the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration, and she will regret this immediately. Where are you watching this from? Share in the comments below. The neighborhood where I live has always been a peaceful place, like a serene painting. Everything happens in order, without noise or any disturbances that could affect the peaceful atmosphere here. Every morning, I can hear the birds singing cheerfully, and each night, the atmosphere becomes calm, like a good night wish. The neighbors always respect one another, from friendly chats on the porch to maintaining cleanliness in the neighborhood together. Everyone follows the HOA's regulations, and no one feels their privacy is invaded. But then, this peace was disturbed when Karen, the HOA president, whom I once respected, began to change. She, a middle-aged woman with blonde hair, a curvy figure, always carefully groomed, and dressed in flashy clothes, had been elected HOA president. I thought the neighborhood would be managed better because she was capable and organized. But all I started to feel was control, imposition, and a sense of unease whenever she appeared. This can't go on, I told myself as I read the notices signed by Karen. The more I read, the more dissatisfied I became. But it wasn't easy confronting her. We need consistency. Everyone must comply with the rules, Karen said in a cold tone, as though no one could object. One morning, as I was washing my car, a notice hit me. All residents must change the color of their front doors according to the new HOA regulations. Completion deadline, 30 days. Failure to comply will result in penalties. I raised an eyebrow, unable to believe my eyes. Why the door paint? I asked, trying to keep my calm. There were hundreds of houses in this neighborhood, each with its own color, and now we had to change just because of some strange rule. What are you saying? Why change it? I couldn't hold back anymore and walked closer to her. Karen turned to look at me, her eyes sharp as knives. It's the HOA's requirement. Everyone needs to comply with the rules to ensure neighborhood consistency, she said, showing no hesitation. But why the door paint? This is our house, not yours, I said, my voice a bit frustrated. She raised her chin, her lips curling into a cold smile. I understand, but if you disagree, I may consider other forms of penalties. Karen responded, her tone anything but soft. I stood frozen for a moment, feeling like I was being squeezed out of my own home. This is too much, I thought, but didn't dare react too harshly. What's next? Do I have to change all the plants in the garden too? The next day, I received a new notice. This time, it was about not allowing any vehicles to park on the sidewalks, even slightly. Why is this happening? I wondered. It was time to speak up. I decided I wouldn't let it slide. One afternoon, I ran into Karen while she was inspecting the sidewalks. Unable to take it anymore, I said, Lena, can you explain why all these demands keep popping up? It's time to stop. Karen turned, staring at me, her eyes piercing. Don't you understand? She asked, her tone full of arrogance. I'm doing this for the good of everyone in the neighborhood. I don't think so. You're imposing all of this on us. We don't need your interference in our personal lives. I shot back, no longer able to contain my frustration. Shut up. I'm in charge here. If you don't like it, find somewhere else to live, Karen said, walking off without looking back. Anger surged in me. A woman like her, holding power, was beginning to control every little detail of our lives. Karen didn't care about anyone's feelings. She only wanted this neighborhood to be her neighborhood. And I, a regular resident, didn't want to stir things up. But I couldn't stand watching her bully us like that. I knew I had to speak out. I couldn't let Karen continue running everything like this. The peaceful life here couldn't turn into a life of fear, and I wouldn't allow her to keep abusing her power like this. The situation really started escalating one day when I returned from a week-long business trip. I was tired from the long journey, just wanting to get home, relax, and enjoy the peace in the place I had lived in for so many years. But when I drove into my neighborhood, the first thing I noticed was a cloud of dust and the loud noise of machinery coming from my backyard. At first, I thought it might be some small repairs in the area, but as I got closer, I couldn't believe my eyes. Right in the spacious yard that I had always carefully maintained, a massive construction project was underway, occupying the land my family and I had lived on for so long. A helicopter landing pad. Yes, a helicopter landing pad with bright signal lights and illuminated signs was being built right in the middle of the garden. The workers were busy with their tasks, not noticing me as I stood outside the gate, staring at the scene that I couldn't believe. Everything seemed to change in an instant. I stepped out of the car, my eyes still locked on the bizarre construction. The landing pad was made of concrete, with crisp white lines and sturdy markings, and it even had a large system of signal lights like those at an actual airport. The lights blinked brightly, and the signs displayed clear information as if it were part of a large project I had no idea about. A project this big, and I hadn't heard anything about it. I tried to stay calm, but inside, everything was spinning. The feeling of my private space being violated spread strongly. How could this happen without any notice or request for permission from me? This was my land, the place where my family had lived, cared for, and nurtured every inch of the garden. Yet now, it had turned into a construction site that I knew nothing about. Unable to stand still any longer, I hurried to the group of workers who were gathered near a large excavator. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice tense. One of the workers turned and looked at me, his eyes wide as if surprised to see me. "Oh, we were instructed to build a helicopter landing pad for the neighborhood," he replied, his voice a little awkward. "This is an order from Lena, the HOA president." Just hearing Karen's name, I felt a storm rising inside me. Karen, the HOA president, the person I had once trusted and thought was responsible. How could she decide on such a big project without consulting me, the landowner? I felt my body freeze, unable to believe what was happening right in front of my eyes. No one asked for my permission about this. Why is this happening without informing me? I shouted, unable to control my anger. Lena can't do this without my consent. The workers looked at each other confusedly. One of them awkwardly stepped forward, trying to explain. "We're just workers. We don't have any decision-making power. Lena said this is part of the neighborhood development plan, so we're just following orders." I couldn't take it anymore. Everything suddenly seemed ridiculous and out of control. How could this happen? And I didn't know anything about it. This was my house, my family's property, and now it had been turned into a project I never agreed to. The tension in me soared. I turned around and rushed inside the house, so angry that my hands were shaking. I couldn't just stand by and watch this happen, and I knew what I had to do. But first, I had to face Karen. I couldn't wait any longer. The feeling of my property rights being violated was something I couldn't accept. In a hurry, I went inside, threw my suitcase aside, and ran outside. I decided to confront Karen immediately, even though I knew this could make things even more tense. When I got to her house, I saw her standing on the balcony, looking down with a satisfied expression, as if everything was going according to her plan. "Lena," I yelled, my voice filled with rage. "What are you doing on my land? This is not your property." Karen turned to look at me, her sharp eyes gliding over me coldly. Contrary to the flustered attitude I expected, she just smiled smugly, as though she had done something great. "Don't you see? This is a great opportunity for our neighborhood to grow. You won't mind, will you?" Her answer made it impossible for me to control my anger. "Growth," I repeated, feeling a fire burning in my chest. "This is my family's property. You don't have the right to just take over my land like this. You didn't inform me. You didn't ask anyone's opinion. Karen still held her cold smile without any sign of embarrassment. It's just a small change. Think about it. If our neighborhood has a helicopter landing pad, how many rich people would want to come here? They'll bring economic opportunities and create great development for this neighborhood. Isn't that good? I felt like she was talking about some product, as if violating my property rights was just part of her plan for the neighborhood's development. She didn't understand, or pretended not to understand, that for me, this wasn't an opportunity, but an abuse of power and a disrespect for privacy. You can't decide everything like this. I snapped, my hands clenched so tightly that my knuckles turned white. This is my house, not a place where you can change anything you want. Karen looked at me, her eyes sharp as knives, but she showed no fear. You're overreacting. This is a great opportunity for all of us, and I think you should think about the long-term benefits. Everyone in the neighborhood will soon realize that. I froze, feeling like I was standing in front of an invisible wall, where all my reasoning, all my emotions, could do nothing to change her decision. If you don't stop immediately, I won't hesitate to take this to the authorities, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I couldn't believe I was saying these words, but I couldn't let her keep doing this. Karen still didn't show any sign of worry. Fine, she said calmly. If you want to go down that road, I won't mind. But I believe we'll work together in the future, and you'll see that everything I'm doing is for the good of the neighborhood. The feeling of anger and helplessness made me dizzy. I stood there, looking at the garden I had nurtured for so many years, now turned into an unwanted construction site. What did I do to deserve this? But I knew I couldn't let this continue. This was my right, and I wasn't going to give it up that easily. At that moment, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Karen's unreasonable actions had crossed my limit. I realized I couldn't let her keep acting like this without consequences. What Karen didn't expect was that I wasn't an ordinary resident. I am the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration, the person who oversees everything related to aviation, including airports and any construction related to aviation. My job is to enforce the strict regulations of the aviation industry, and I have the power to stop any project that violates FAA rules. When I realized that the helicopter landing pad Karen had constructed was a clear violation, I couldn't just stand by. This was my job for many years, and I knew the power I held. Deciding not to let this go any further, I immediately began taking action. I picked up the phone and contacted the authorities. Hello, I'm the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. I would like to report an illegal construction taking place in my neighborhood. A helicopter landing pad has been built without permission, and I request immediate inspection, I said with determination. We'll send someone to inspect right away, the voice on the other end replied. I couldn't wait any longer. In the following days, the authorities quickly came to inspect and confirmed that the helicopter landing pad Karen had built was completely illegal. Industry experts confirmed that this construction not only violated building regulations, but also posed a threat to aviation safety. I felt a part of me relax as I saw justice being served, but I knew this was only the beginning. The court immediately intervened and ordered Karen to dismantle the entire project. Furthermore, she had to compensate me for invading my family's land without permission. The whole neighborhood knew about it now. The community started buzzing, and Karen couldn't keep her smug demeanor anymore. One day, I finally stood in front of Karen in court, where I could clearly feel that everything was being set right. I had waited for this moment for so long, and today, as I saw her standing there, it felt like justice had finally arrived. Karen, who had made me and so many others suffer, was no longer confident or smart. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight, and her eyes were full of anger and surprise. The entire room was silent, waiting for what would come next. The judge began asking, Miss Lena, can you explain why this construction was carried out without permission and violated the Federal Aviation Administration's regulations? Karen stood still, trying to regain her composure. She took a deep breath, then began to justify herself. But all her explanations were weak and couldn't save her. This project is very important, she began, but her voice lacked certainty. You see, our neighborhood needs to grow, and this helicopter pad will help attract big investors. I've thought a lot about the community's benefits. With a helicopter pad, we'll have the chance to attract the wealthy investors, all for the development of this neighborhood. I looked at her without interrupting. I didn't need to hear any more explanations. Everything was clear now. I stood up, suddenly cutting off all her words. You can't fool me forever, I said, my voice calm but firm. Justice has won. The entire courtroom fell silent, and everyone's eyes turned to Karen. She stood motionless, as if my words had pierced through her arrogance. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. I could see the collapse in her eyes as she realized that all her excuses no longer held any weight. I, I can't believe this, Karen mumbled, her voice trembling as though she was trying to find the confidence she had lost. But every word she said seemed to fall into an invisible void. No one listening, no one sympathizing. She looked at me, then her eyes shifted toward the judge, as if seeking salvation. But the judge's expression remained unchanged, and he kept his firm gaze on her, striking his gavel. The court has heard enough reasons and evidence. The construction you carried out without permission, violating the rights of the plaintiff and breaching FAA regulations, is an abuse of power and is unacceptable, the judge declared, his voice leaving no doubt. Therefore, the court orders Ms. Lena to dismantle the entire helicopter pad immediately. Furthermore, she must compensate the plaintiff for violating their property rights. The court will also impose a heavy fine on her for violating aviation safety regulations. Karen stood still, her eyes blank, and I could feel her collapse right there in the courtroom. She had no more words to say. Her smugness was completely gone, replaced by clear defeat. She couldn't have imagined that everything would end like this, that the power she had used to manipulate everyone no longer had any effect. When the trial ended, news of Karen's defeat quickly spread throughout the neighborhood. The residents, who had once feared and respected her, now began to stand up. The community no longer saw her as a powerful leader, but as someone who abused her power to exploit others. Karen's old friends, those who had always supported and protected her, now started to turn their backs on her. All the relationships she had built over the years were now shattered. No one wanted to maintain a relationship with someone who had abused power and exploited those around her. Karen, after everything, not only lost the illegal construction, but also lost her position as HOA president. The entire neighborhood no longer viewed her with respect, only with disdain and avoidance. Soon after, she had to sell her house and leave the neighborhood in shame. When I saw Karen packing her things, I felt a relief that words cannot describe. Justice had been served. It felt like I had done something great, not only for myself, but also for the whole community. The whole neighborhood had returned to its peaceful state. A week later, unable to bear the pressure from the community, Karen was forced to sell her house and leave the neighborhood. The people around, who had once kept a cautious attitude, now saw her leaving, no longer needing to keep up appearances. I stood there, watching her pack up, feeling an indescribable relief. The neighborhood was back to its peaceful state. Karen had paid for her abuse of power. I felt satisfied that justice had been served. More importantly, I realized that my family's rights had been protected. But through this ordeal, I also understood that sometimes no one can abuse power recklessly without paying the price. This neighborhood, the place I had lived for many years, was now back to its original peaceful state. where everyone could live freely and with mutual respect. Have you ever faced a similar situation? Please share your story in the comments below this video. And don't forget to hit subscribe to follow more stories about the fight for justice and personal rights. Thank you for following and supporting the channel.